كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Welcome back our dear students who are taking this BA. May Allah bless you all. So this is obviously the BA course for the Hanafi Fiqh through Wise University, and lectures provided by White Thread. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this easy. So we're coming to the end of the discussion on Illah, right? And so what we're going to look at today is Qiyas. You've got everything set up. And now the way to understand this one is that it's actually, you can say, is that this discussion we're going to have today, what they refer to as Daf'ul Qiyas, right? This is what the books will call it usually, Daf'ul Qiyas, which means to repel an analogy. Okay, what that usually means is that one of the madhabs, whether that's the Hanafi, Shafi'i, whatever, has a qiyas all set up, you've identified it, you've seen its efficacy, etc., according to your principles. However, another madhab disagrees with it and repels it. They don't agree with your qiyas, because there could be different perspectives. And it's not that like definitive of a process that once you've got it, it is it. There could be differences in this, because ultimately this is a speculative practice and an exercise. So in the following today, first what we're going to be discussing is the usually the eight different ways that we repel qiyas, or the qiyases have been repelled. And we're going to discuss them from the perspective of the Shafi'i school, meaning they have provided a qiyas according to their laws, according to their principles and maxims, which we have not studied obviously. So while the qiyas may be completely fine according to their ways and their laws, we're not going to accept them. The Hanafis aren't going to accept them because we look at it differently. And the different elements, remember qiyas is elements, right? It has the original case and it has the effective cause within that case, and then you have the new case, and then the ruling that you transfer over to it. So we could say that, hey, you've misidentified the actual illah, or you've confused something else. So there's usually eight ways to do that, which we're going to be looking at today. Not 8 ways of doing that, but this is 8 things that usually have happened in terms of our qiyas, or our rejecting their qiyas and not agreeing with their qiyas. And I'm sure there'll be similar things in other madhab, but we're speaking from our madhab, which is the Hanafi school, and how that happens. That's what we're going to be discussing today. To start off, the concept is called mumana'a, right, or man'ul qiyas. Comes from the concept of mumana'a, which means to mutually cancel out something, because repel something, not agree with something, prevent something because you don't agree with the process or something like that. And in other words, I think you could define this as عدم قبول دليل المستدل كلا أو بعضا. It's to not accept the evidence provided by the extrapolator, the inferrer. Either in its entirety you don't agree with it, or you don't agree with it partially, right? So there are 10 ways that this happens. Sorry, there are 8 ways that this happens. One of them is you just completely disagree and you disregard their illah, and you believe that it's actually not an illah. For example, the Shafis have necessitated sadaqatul fitr, right, which is that special charity that's given on the that's given on Eid al-Fitr on behalf of people in your household. So they believe that sadaqatul fitr is obligatory by way of because of because of Eid al-Fitr. So which means that if somebody died during the night time, all of these actually require a bit more explanation. So if they die during the night time in Fitr, the night of the Fitr, right, after Ramadan and the night of Eid, then they no longer have to pay. They no longer have to pay. right? We're saying no, we don't agree with that. لا نسلم وجوبها بالفطر. We don't agree that its effective cause is the fitr, and because they're not there in the morning, we're not going to say that because we don't treat that as the illah that they're going to for Eid al-Fitr, or it's in the morning time because they died at night. We're still going to say that they are still the head of the household is still liable for that dependent. Let me give you another example. Let's just say that somebody's son died, a young infant died. Now, it's not obligatory on the infant directly. We say that the illah for this is that if the father is responsible for their expenses and care, then he has to pay sadaqatul fitr for them. It's not the fact that it is they were alive on the day of Eid. That's why. Which means that the Shafi'i say that if they died at night time and did not make it till the morning, it's cancelled for him. We're saying no. He was still responsible for him even at night time, and it started after Maghrib, so he is responsible for him. So that's why he will have to pay. So لا نسلم وجوبها بالفطر بل تجب برأس يمونه ويلي عليه. We believe that it's actually necessary by the fact that he is the guardian, he has the responsibility for the expenses. Okay, so that was the first one. That was what you call man'ul illah, where you don't agree with their illah, and that's why you change the ruling of that. The next one is man'ul hukm. So you might agree with their illah, but you don't believe that it's actually causing that particular hukm. That illah does not provide that hukm, it provides another hukm. For example, Imam Shafi'i says that because the head is a rukn, wiping the head is a rukn of integral of the wudu. That's why just like with every other rukn, like the arms and the legs and the face, yeah, it's sunnah to wash them 3 times. Hence, it should be sunnah to wipe the head 3 times as well, because they're all arkan, right? So all of them are integrals, and integrals like the 3 should be done 3 times, so they should be done 3 times as well. We say that the factor of 3 is actually not the real hukm in any of them. What it is as mentioned in the hadith, and that you want to do it properly, you want to do it completely. And yes, many times doing something completely means to you achieve that by doing 3 times. So we don't believe that the hukm of the illah is because it's a rukn, the hukm of it is not to do it 3 times. The hukm of it is actually to do something completely and perfectly, right, and thoroughly. And in washing, yeah, that's done by washing 3 times. But if you're going to do that in your head, then what you're going to end up doing is, if you wipe 3 times, it's going to become washing. It's going to change it. And you can get complete washing. So for us, only a quarter of the head is wajib to do masah. You do the full head, that's what sunnah, not 3 times. Right? So that's the difference in there. Okay, the third one is that we agree with the illah, but we don't agree that the hukm that they're saying is actually what they're claiming. We think that the hukm is something else, right? So yeah, I'll give you an example of that. This one is, so we agree with the illah, but we're saying that the hukm it provides is a different one. For example, Imam Zufar rahimahullah says that the elbow is seen as the end of where you wash until, and usually the end target or the limit is not included in the whole process, because you've already reached there. You don't have to include that in there. We're saying that so we're saying to him, and again this gets a bit technical, what we will claim in that case is that no, we don't agree that that's the limit of the washing. We believe that's the limit of what. So هي غاية الساقط دون المغسول فتدخل في المغير. So we're saying that no, that's actually a limit of where you don't have to wash after. So it would be included in the washing and not included in the part that you don't have to wash. So you have to wash including the elbows, and you have to wash above it. So it's the limit to show where you don't have to wash above off. It's, again, as I said in the beginning, it's different ways of looking at it and different ways of judging it, right? So, yeah, what else is there? So we don't agree with the way they've explained it, essentially. Okay, what was it? The second one now. Sorry, the third one in that case, because we've done 2 and 3, right? This one is called al-qalb. Okay, al-qalb means where you've taken in the opposite way, the way we would take it. So again, this is going back to Imam Shafi'i. Is what they would consider to be the illah and what they would consider to be the hukm, we flip it around. We're saying that their hukm is actually the illah and their illah is the hukm. Now again, that sounds kind of crazy, it sounds strange, but I'll give you an example. Imam Shafi'i says that it is not allowed, because based on the hadith of riba that I've explained quite a few times, it would also not be allowed to sell a handful of wheat for 2 handfuls of wheat, because that would also include riba, right? And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that a handful of wheat for 2 handfuls of wheat. So that means that it's disparity there. And their reasoning is that if it's going to happen in in a measure like a kilo or in a liter of it or whatever, then it should happen even in smaller amounts. In smaller amounts, should be the same. Just like you do in money, right? Whether it's a small amount of gold or a big amount of gold. We're saying no. It's the other way around. We don't agree that those things which apply in larger quantities have to also apply in smaller, because that's their argument, that if it applies in larger quantities, everybody agrees, then it must apply in smaller quantities. We say no, that's not the way it works. It's actually the other way around. The rule is, the principle is that if something is applicable in a meager amount, a small amount, trivial amount, or minuscule amount, then it has to be, that would necessitate that it be applied in a larger amount, but not the opposite way. That's not always true, and we've got many examples to that fact. And the reason for this is that this is exactly what happens in coins. The standard day is that even in a small coin, small amount of gold or silver, it happens. So in larger amounts, it's another way of looking at it, right? And we've got other reasons why we make the smaller amount, like a handful, to be a casual kind of exchange. That should not really include riba, because it's more of assisting one another in that regard. Okay, the next one now, that should be, I think, number 5 or something, right? Is subhanallah, قلب علة الحكم علة لضد ذلك الحكم. So they claim that this particular illah provides this hukm. We say we don't agree with that. What it should actually be is that this same illah should actually be a cause for the opposite of the hukm that they've taken. So A is the illah, and they say B is its hukm. We say we don't agree that A affects B, but it actually affects the opposite of B, which is C, in the case where B and C are opposite, right? قلب العلة حكما this is قلب علة الحكم علة لضد ذلك الحكم. Again, Imam Shafi'i says that صوم رمضان صوم فرض. The Ramadan fast are fard fasts. And usually for fard fasts, on any other time, you need, like qada, like if you're going to make up a fast, you need to have an intention from the night before, because if you don't, like today, if I was going to fast, then I should have had, if I wanted to fast for a makeup of my Ramadan, because it's not Ramadan right now, I should have made the intention from the night, because if I try to make the intention in the daytime, it's already become nafil by default, because the default outside Ramadan is usually nafil fasts, right? So because the fard fast, which means my makeup fast, is a fard fast, so likewise in Ramadan you better also intend from the night, and you can't do it in the daytime. We say no. our ruling is completely different. We don't believe that having a fard fast necessitates the intention from night. We actually say that if it's a fard fast, then it's actually not necessary to intend it from the night. Not necessary to intend it from night, because the Sharia has already designated the day to be necessary. So in Ramadan, we believe that, and I think they probably would agree to this, is that if somebody in a normal case scenario decides that, you know, I've kept 5 fasts for Ramadan already, you know what, tomorrow I know it's Ramadan, but you know what, I want to keep a nafil fast, I just want to be different. Even if he does that intention, according to the Hanafis and probably the others, it will still become a Ramadan fast by default, because that supersedes everything. It's very strong. A Ramadan fast is very strong. It's been designated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be for Ramadan. So our opinion is that we don't believe that the being fard is something that necessitates, right? That necessitates it to be on necessitated by night, because when it comes to Ramadan fast, which everybody agrees fard fast is not necessitate to specify it from the night time and make intention that, oh, that tomorrow is Ramadan. We believe that it will happen by default. As long as you intend to fast tomorrow without any intention, in fact even with intention for nafil, it's just going to become a fard fast of Ramadan anyway. So we can't apply that even to a qada. In a qada it might be different there, but we don't believe that that's the hukum. In fact, what we believe is that it's not necessary to intend from the night when it comes to, for example, a Ramadan fast. So that means that we're giving the opposite hukum. They're saying it's necessary, we're saying it's not necessary. So we're saying that the illah of this being a fard actually shows that you don't have to intend it, whereas they're saying that because it's fard, it means you have to intend it, and that's the hukum of it. So we're going completely opposite to them in that regard. Just as if, for example, if I had intended to fast tomorrow for a qada fast, I've already specified it, then I don't have to make an extra intention for that afterwards. Okay. The next one is, again, is probably easiest understood through an example, but it's called al-aks, the opposite reflection, right? And the idea of this is to actually say that, let me give you an example first. Imam Shafi'i, the Shafi'is say that if a woman is using her gold and silver jewelry through the year at least once or so, she doesn't have to pay zakat on it anymore, because they say that that's how it differentiates it from becoming just normal growth potential gold or silver, right? So there's only zakat in coins and other things that are not worn, because this has become a different purpose. So what we're saying in this case is that no. So they're saying that, yeah, there's no zakat in there, just like there's no zakat in clothing that you wear. There's only zakat in clothing if you're going to be selling those clothes, if they've bought them for resale. If they're your own clothing that you wear and you worn, there's no zakat in that. So they equate those two together. We're saying that we don't agree with you, right? We don't agree with that way of thinking, because if we go by your thought, right, then it's going to mess everything up. So what we're doing is we're disagreeing with their opinion based on the fact that it's going to cause inaccuracies and inconsistencies in other cases. So that means that what we're saying is that, so do you mean that if a man has gold and silver which he's made into jewelry and he keeps it in the form of necklaces and bracelets and he wears them, would you also say that there's no zakat applicable to them? They wouldn't agree with that. They say, no, this is specially for women. So why is it specially for not for men? Why don't you keep it consistent? So that means that your hukum, if we agree with it, it's actually going to be broken through this other case, right? Obviously, they'll probably have some explanation for it, right, to make sense of what they're saying, no doubt. But we don't agree with the way they're looking at this, and we're saying that women who have jewelry, they still have to pay zakat on it, even if they literally wear it every day, because we say that the real illah here is the fact that that particular gold or silver is intrinsically valuable, right? It has intrinsic value of growing and of investment and of being currency and being an intrinsically valued commodity. You have to pay zakat on that. It doesn't matter what you do with it, whether it's for trade or just for safekeeping or for storage or for a store of value. It's going to have zakat on it. So we don't agree that it will change that purpose of it. Okay, the next one is what you call they call fasadul wada. You formulated this wrong, you've misidentified it, you've got it different, and essentially we're saying that that characteristic you've determined as an effective clause is actually not effective at all. It can't produce that hukum. For example, we've given this example to explain something else before, so you should be able to relate to it. That if there's a couple non-Muslim and one of them becomes Muslim, the nikah becomes corrupt and vitiated and broken between them because one is Muslim now, the other one isn't, right? And usually the reason that the Shafis give for that is that it's the becoming of Muslim that has broken it. Again, this is a different perspective. We're saying no, Islam cannot be blamed for this. We can't consider that to be the illah, because Islam is there to protect people's rights and fix things and bring things together. So you can say it's the refusal of the other side. So as you can see from this, a lot of these are just difference in perspective. What one madhab would consider more important, the other one consider to be something else more important, a factor. As I said, this is a speculative exercise. Okay, next one is al-farq, numbers. I think this is number 7 or something like that. It's called al-farq, right? Which is to show that there are two different matters here and it's not consistent. Imam Shafi'i says that zakat is necessary even in the wealth of a child. So if a child has over £300-400 or $500 or something like that, which is, around the minimum quantum required for somebody to pay zakat, to be obligated to pay zakat. However, we say that if a child is even a millionaire, he doesn't have to pay zakat. The Hanafis say that, but the Shafis say no, he has to. If he's got more than the quantum, even a child has to pay zakat. Why? Why should he pay zakat? What is it that forcing? He takes the illah, right? He takes the effective cause as enriching the poor, assisting the poor. So that this guy, basically they would say that since the child could also enrich the poor, which means that they could also benefit the poor, they must do it as well, because that is the effective cause. And we're saying no, because they would say that because the adult's wealth does that, the child's wealth does that as well. There's no difference. He's got enough money, so let him, be obligated to pay. We say no. Wujub zakat is actually not based on that fact. That's a wisdom of it. That is a purpose of it. But the real illah of it is to free you from sin, to purify a person from sin. Because if you don't, you get sinful. That is what really, that's one of the main reasons there. Along with the fact that yes, it does have, these can be additional reasons. So you see, they consider one of the points that we also would agree with to a certain degree to be the significant factor to make it the illah. We're saying no, that's an additional point, purpose, benefit, but the real reason is تطهيرهم خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها وصلي عليهم. Take zakat from their wealth, by which you purify them and cleanse them. So that's what Allah says in the Quran. He's focused on the purification aspect as well. So we do the same thing. So you've got misaligned, you've got a wrong designation there. There's a difference between the two matters. That's why it's called farq. Okay, the next one is called an-naqd. Naqd means, and again, they've probably had to find these different terms. They don't necessarily be, naqd usually means to break something, right? But here what it means is to show that this hukm can't follow from this illah, that it doesn't affect that particular hukm. So Imam Shafi'i, and again, this is always a comparison with Imam Shafi'i in this case, but similar things could happen with other madhahib. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah said, al-wudu tahara. Right, wudu is purification. So that's why, if it's purification, then purification requires intention, like tayammum. So using tayammum, now everybody agrees. We even agree that tayammum does require intention, because the word tayammum itself means to intend. So we've taken that into consideration and said, if you're going to do tayammum, dry ablution, you better have intention. But we say that when it's wudu, proper wudu, ablution, you don't need intention in that. So if you did become wet in all the areas that should be washed, even without you wanting it, your wudu would be done whether you like it or not. The Shafi'i say it won't be unless you intended it. So they make intention necessary because their reasoning is that it is because of its purity. So just like tayammum is a purity and tayammum requires intention, this also requires intention. We're saying no, it doesn't work that way, right? Your understanding and ratiocination gets broken and becomes invalid by the fact that when somebody wants to wash off filth from their clothes, if there's filth on their clothes or their body and they want to wash that off, they also agree that if it got washed off, the person jumped into a pool, or he scraped it somewhere, or he was in a downpour and that whatever that impurity was, like some little bird poop or some urine, got washed off without intending it. Oh, it's no longer there, it got washed off. They would also say that that's fine. But that's also purification, isn't it? So be consistent everywhere. So you don't need intention in that case. You agree with that. The Shafi'is agree. We're talking to the Shafi'is. So if you don't need it there, why do you need it here for? This is not the real reason, right? This is not the real reason. Wudu, the illah for niyyah is not it being a purification, right? And the last one is what they call al-mu'arada. So we'll discuss that. So the last one that we're going to discuss today, which is the 8th one. So remember, there were 8 ways that we see different perspectives in what the istihsan is. So we're not going to agree. We're not going to agree with the qiyas. So the last one is called al-mu'arada. And mu'arada means to contend with something, but here it means to establish an evidence, to say that actually the evidence that we believe in is different to the one that you believe in. Most of these, as I say, they're more the debated ones. So this is like Imam Shafi'i says that since masah is a rukn in wudu, that's why it's necessary to do it 3 times, just like the washing is done 3 times. But we say, I think we had a discussion about this before, right, in a different context. But we say that no, yes, masah is a rukn. We agree with you, masah is an integral. And whatever's an integral, that is why actually it is not necessary to wash it 3 times. Just like when you wipe over when you wipe over leather socks, or when you do tayammum, you don't do that 3 times. Once is enough. So when they look at it, they're thinking of another aspect that they want to equate it. We're looking at another aspect to equate it. We're saying the same thing. We're saying that yes, it's a rukn, and because of that, we say it is not necessary to do it 3 times. That's not what makes it necessary 3 times at all. Otherwise, it would do so in something else, but it doesn't, as you agree, that in masah over the leather socks, it's not necessary. So you can see how they're providing a different consequence of it being an integral, and we're providing a different consequence. So this gives you an idea of how jurists can have differences between them. And of course, that's why it's very complicated to follow 2 madhabs at once, because you're going to mix up your principles and your way of looking at things and your way of legislation, your procedure, and that always ends up with a lot of chaos and turmoil. Alright, alhamdulillah. So we still have some time left of this lesson. So I'm going to introduce the new section, the new topic for this session now, and finish off in the next one, inshallah. So that is al-istihsan. Now, while al-istihsan sounds like just a bigger name, but really what it is that it's a type of qiyas. It's a type of qiyas. Some books don't have a detailed description of this, while others do. And istihsan is a qiyas. That's why it's always within that chapter. And there is a difference between what that means. So qiyases are actually of multiple types, as I explained to you earlier. Now, when it comes to qiyas in terms of finding some evidence and then finding something to compare that with and so on, this particular istihsan is slightly different to that. So I also explained to you that qiyas meant the default ruling in something that we've understood from the multiple other narrations or Quranic verses on that subject, which has given us an idea, and then suddenly you find one narration which tells you something else. So istihsan essentially is where you already have a default ruling on something found through other narrations, and a jurist has looked into it further and discovered that there is something subtle that calls for this to be different than the default ruling found from the other narrations. Okay, so you've got narrations from both sides, you've got evidence essentially on both sides, so which one do you take now? So usually in the majority of cases they'll take the istihsan, because the whole point and definition of ihsan is to take that other more subtle point as evidence, because it's stronger, more worthwhile, more conducive for the context, and more beneficial. It's definitely not something related to I just feel that's better. There's a procedure to follow in this, which I'll explain to you. So that is what you call istihsan. It's just it's a type of qiyas in the sense that it is a way of legislation. So this is the way they define it. The normal qiyas, they say al-qiyas al-jali. They call that the more evident qiyas, the manifest qiyas. And that essentially means that whatever hukm and procedure of illah to hukm comes about and appears in the mind of a jurist, in the heart of a jurist, when he is there trying to legislate, that is what's usually going to be called a qiyas. Now, on the other hand, if a jurist is to ignore that, or rather dismiss that for something else a lot more subtle but more conducive in this particular context, that is usually going to be considered to be istihsan. Now that has to obviously happen with a lot of consideration, because you can't just dismiss that which is clearly the evidences point to for something that it points to in a more subtle manner, unless there's a good reason to do so, right? So that is essentially what istihsan is, where you take a more kind of a hidden, concealed, nuanced evidence, and you then disregard the other evidence and say we're going to go with this instead of the other one, which seems to be a lot more apparent. Now again, all of this is just part of a sophisticated system. That's what it is, you know, because the deen has to be pragmatic. And while something on the face of it might seem like it's pointing in a certain direction, we're going to say no, we have to read deeper, and there's something else here that we need to take into consideration. So that's qiyas khafi, which in other words is called the istihsan. Now the Hanafis have used istihsan a lot. Their books are full of various different rulings that are based on istihsan. And now sometime, in many of the times, they're usually going to be mentioned in opposition to the qiyas jali. So usually they'll provide the normal qiyas in it. So usually you're going to see the comparison, and not always. And then in many cases you're going to see that Imam Abu Hanifa may have gone with the qiyas jali, and the sahibain, which means Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, have gone with the istihsan. Sometimes it's the other way around, sometimes a mixture of both. It just depends. So usually the books will tell you this is qiyas wa hadha istihsan. Qiyas and istihsan, usually that is the case, right? For example, say that qiyas here means that this should be prohibited, but istihsan here means that no, we can allow this. So essentially you can say that it is the contention of two dalils, and we've taken the istihsan is where you take the most subtle one based on the context. So just quickly, linguistically speaking, istihsan literally just means to find something appreciative, to appreciate something, to find something good, to find something more conducive, to find something more beautiful, to find something more appropriate. That's the meaning of istihsan, right? So Allah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, using that kind of term in the Quran, Surah Al-Zumar, verse 17-18, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِ, give glad tidings to my servants, الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ, who listen to the speech, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ, and then they follow the most superior. They follow the superior one, the better one. That shows you, that's why they call it istihsan, because istihsan is usually going to be in comparison. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ, and then it carries on. Now, technically speaking, istihsan is that dalil that is usually that usually is in opposition to the more standard way of looking at it, the more apparent way, which comes to the mind of the jurist. It has to do with the jurist after a lot more deeper deliberation and consideration in it, right? That's essentially what it is. Why do they take that one? Because it's stronger, right? They deem it to be stronger. Now, there are three types of istihsan. It's done in three ways. There are three considerations to when you compare it to the qiyas jali. There's usually three sets of rules or procedures that you can adopt to reach an istihsan. They're reached through three different procedures. So I'm going to start off with one of them, and as I said, we'll continue in the next session. The first one is al-istihsan bi usul al-istinbat. So the way you develop this ruling is by the same way that you've developed the qiyasi ruling, and you've done two, and one gives you that, one gives you this, or somebody else done that one and you found this one. So what happens now is, to be more particular about this, you as a jurist are more prepared to give preference rather to a dalil which is more universal, or a usuli qaida, a principle, right? So let's just say there's an event, there's an incident, and there are two qaidas in usul that could apply there. If you apply maxim 1, principle 1, it gives us this hukum, that it's prohibited. And if you apply the other one, if you look at it from that perspective, and they both sound qa'idas, then it's going to say that it's permitted. So the one which seems to be the more apparent one will usually be the qiyas, and the one that seems to be the more subtle one that you're going to reach. And the fact that it's subtle means that you've given more deliberation to it, usually, right? So that it's a comparison between those two. The other way that it could be that it's a dalil juz'i, is that specific evidence you're taking something from, an ayah or a hadith which is saying something, and that is, so the first one was a comparison between what two different principles would result in, and in this case it's between the two small specific evidences. This hadith says prohibition, this particular hadith says it's permission. So which one do we go with here? They're both hadith, right? So again, a decision has to be made, otherwise there's going to be a contradiction of sorts. So you could say that this is, since there are two possibilities, istihsan is a way of, you can say, specifying one and leaving out the other. That's another way to describe this. Okay, now let us look at some examples, and again, with these examples this will become, inshallah, a lot more clearer. So the example I've got for you is, I've spoken about the advanced sale permissibility of the Babus Salam, Bay'us Salam, the advanced sale, right? I explained it in one of the previous lessons. The Prophet ﷺ, where do we get the permission from, or permissibility of that? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man aslafa fal yuslif fi kaylin ma'lumin waznin ma'lumin ila ajalin ma'lum," which essentially is permitting the salam transaction. Even though the sale items at that point are not even existent. Now, there is another principle we already have based on another hadith, which is وَلَا تَبِعْ مَا لَيْسَ عِنْدَكَ, that don't sell what you don't own, which says that you're not allowed to do a sale like this, and that is across the board. We usually apply that. So that's already established, and then we've got this hadith which seems to be saying that this particular one though is okay. So that's why we have, this is where we've actually exempted this and said that this one is okay based on the hadith that we have, where we will allow it to happen. Another one is, again, and one of the examples we gave in the past, that the normal default ruling is that if you eat while your fasting is broken, right? However, we have a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man akala aw shariba nasiyan fala yuftir, innama huwa rizqun razaqahu Allah." That if you are not remembering your fast and you've forgotten your fasting, it's the first day of Ramadan, for example, you eat, then consider that from Allah, and your fast isn't broken. Now, some ulama have given preference to the main ruling and said we're going to dismiss this. This is qabr wahid or whatever, right? However, you say no, this is significant and there's a good reason here to take that. So another one is, when if somebody laughs out aloud, that's not seen as one of the nullifiers of prayer of wudu. Usually nullifying wudu means that you're going to have some discharge of some sort, urination, defecation, passing wind, bleeding, etc. Right? Why should laughing out aloud break the wudu? However, if you laugh, there's a hadith which says that if a person laughs while in salat, loud enough for others to hear it, that would not just break their salat, it'll break their wudu. It's completely khilaf al-qiyas. It sounds completely illogical, irrational in that sense, because the rational understanding is that something impure coming from your body breaks. What is laughter got to do with it? But this is an exceptional ruling mentioned there, and while it may be a long narration, etc., we're still going to go with it, right? We're still going to go with it. That's why it's related from Imran ibn Hussein, Anas, Jabir, Abu Musa ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said that man dahika fi salati qahqahatan, whoever laughs out in a guffaw, in a loud sound that others can hear, فَلْيُعِيدِ الْوُضُوءَ وَالصَّلَاةِ, they should repeat the wudu and the salat, right? So inshallah we'll complete the rest of this discussion in the next session, inshallah, and then move on to the next lesson. Please keep us all in your du'as, and we pray that Allah give you the best in both worlds, and especially benefit from this Hanafi fiqh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.